Nick Newman couldn't breathe, darkness pressed in from every side, a rough bag suffocated his face, his hands tied, his body barely able to move, and then, the bag was ripped away. Blinding light hit his eyes, and standing over him was Matt Clark. "Hey Nick, long time no see," that voice, cold, calm, dangerous, and in that moment, everything changed. Because this wasn't just a random attack, this was personal, this was revenge, and Nick realized he might not make it out alive. At the same time across town another secret was about to explode. Sally Spectra stood still, her hands slightly shaking, her voice low, almost afraid to break the silence. "Did you bring what I asked for?" Audra Charles studied her carefully, sharp eyes, calculating mind. Sally wasn't acting like herself, there was something deeper here, something she wasn't saying out loud. And Audra knew it. "Are you sure you're okay?" Audra asked, watching her closely. Sally forced a small smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. Because the truth was, she didn't know if she was okay. Not anymore. Not after what she suspected. Not after what could change everything. She looked at Audra again, this time more serious. "Please tell me you brought it." A pause, and then Audra slowly reached into her bag. The tension in the room thickened, because whatever Sally was about to find out would change her future forever. Meanwhile, miles away in Genoa City, a different kind of storm was brewing. Diane Jenkins Abbott stood firm, arms crossed, heart guarded. Tracy Abbott stepped closer, her voice calm but filled with emotion. "You need to have a little compassion," Tracy said gently. Diane let out a quiet breath. Her eyes hardened. "Compassion," she repeated. Tracy didn't back down. "Jack has forgiven you for things most people never would." That hit. Diane's jaw tightened, but she didn't respond. "Not yet." Tracy continued, her voice steady. "You convinced Jack and Kyle that you were dead. You disappeared from their lives, you let them grieve you." Silence. Heavy. Thick. Unavoidable. "And still, Jack forgave you." Diane looked away. Because she knew it was true. "But that didn't make this easier." "That's different," Diane finally said. Her voice was low. Controlled. "Jack betrayed me." Tracy stepped closer. "He was drugged," she insisted softly. Diane shook her head. "That's what he says," she replied, and there it was. The doubt. The pain. The anger she couldn't let go of. "I only have his word," Diane added. "And I'm supposed to just believe it." Tracy's eyes softened, because she could see it. Diane wasn't just angry, she was hurt. Deeply. "You're both hurting," Tracy said quietly, "and if you don't find a way through this, you could lose each other for good." Diane didn't respond. But her silence said everything. Back in Las Vegas, the tension had already exploded. Nick struggled against the ropes, his muscles strained, his breathing sharp. "What do you want?" he demanded. Matt smirked slightly. "You," he said simply. That answer sent a chill down Nick's spine. Matt crouched slightly, bringing himself eye level with his enemy. "You always thought you were in control," Matt continued. "But look at you now." Nick glared at him. "You're making a mistake," he shot back. Matt chuckled. "No," he said calmly. "I'm correcting one." That tone, it wasn't rushed. It wasn't emotional. It was calculated. And that made it even more dangerous, because Matt had a plan, and Nick was right in the middle of it. Elsewhere, Sally stood frozen in the bathroom. The pregnancy test sat in her hand. Small, silent, powerful, her entire future hanging on a few seconds. Her mind raced. Billy, their relationship, everything they had been building together, was it about to change overnight? She took a shaky breath. "This is crazy," she whispered to herself. But she couldn't stop now. She had to know, had to face whatever truth was waiting. Because if she was pregnant, nothing would ever be the same again. Back in Genoa City, Diane finally spoke again. "I'm not perfect," she admitted quietly. Tracy nodded gently. "I know that. But I can't just forget what happened," Diane added. Her voice cracked slightly, and for a moment, the strong, guarded woman faded, revealing someone vulnerable underneath. Someone who had been hurt. more than she wanted to admit. Tracy reached out, her voice soft. You don't have to forget. A pause, but maybe you can choose to forgive. Diane closed her eyes for a brief second. Because forgiveness wasn't easy, especially not when trust had been broken, especially not when doubt still lingered. Meanwhile, in Las Vegas, Nick's situation was getting worse. Matt stood up again, pacing slowly. You know, Matt said casually, I've been thinking about this moment for a long time. Nick's eyes narrowed. What do you mean? Matt stopped, turned, looked straight at him. I mean, this isn't random. Another chill. Another realization. This wasn't just about anger, this was planned. Carefully, precisely, everything that's happening right now. Matt continued, it's exactly how I wanted it. Nick's heart pounded, because whatever Matt had in mind. Across town, Chelsea Lawson stepped into her room in Vegas. Her expression tense, her thoughts racing. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong, something about Adam. Something about this entire situation. She had tried to ignore it, tried to tell herself it was just anxiety, but now, it felt real, too real. I have to find him, she whispered. Because if Adam was in trouble, she wasn't going to stand by and do nothing. Back with Sally. The moment had come. She stared at the test, her hands trembling, her breath uneven. Seconds felt like hours. And then, she looked down, her eyes widened. Her heart stopped. Because the result was not what she expected. And suddenly, everything she thought she knew about her future was thrown into chaos. Back in that dark storage room, Nick made one last attempt to break free. The ropes cut into his skin, but he didn't stop. He couldn't. Not now, not when his life was on the line. Matt watched him calmly, almost amused. You're not getting out of this, Matt said. Nick looked up at him, determined. You don't know me, Nick fired back. Matt smiled slightly. Oh, I know you very well, he replied. And that smile, it wasn't friendly. It wasn't mocking, it was something worse. It was certain, and that's when Nick realized this wasn't just a threat. This was the beginning of something much bigger, something darker, something that could destroy everything, and somewhere in the chaos, one question remained. Where was Adam Newman? And would he get there in time, or walk straight into a trap of his own? Sally couldn't move. Her eyes stayed locked on the test in her hand. Her breathing slowed, then hitched. No, she whispered under her breath. But the result didn't change. It stayed there, clear, unavoidable. Her fingers tightened around it as emotion rushed through her all at once. Shock, fear, confusion, and something else she didn't expect. Hope. Her knees felt weak as she leaned back against the sink. This wasn't how she imagined finding out. Not like this. Not in secret, not with her heart racing out of control. Billy, his face flashed in her mind, his voice, his promises. The way he looked at her when he talked about the future, their future. Sally swallowed hard, because now, that future might be arriving faster than either of them planned. And suddenly, the question wasn't just what this meant for her, it was what this meant for them. Would Billy be ready? Would he panic? Or would this bring them closer than ever before? A quiet knock echoed from the other side of the door. Sally, Audra's voice called out. Sally didn't answer right away. She stared at her reflection instead, trying to recognize the woman looking back. Because everything had just changed. Finally she spoke. I'm coming. But even as she said it, she knew nothing would ever be simple again. Meanwhile, in Genoa City, Diane stood frozen as Tracy's words echoed in her mind. You can choose to forgive. It sounded so simple, too simple. Diane shook her head slowly. You don't understand, she said quietly. Tracy didn't interrupt. She just listened. Because this wasn't about logic anymore, it was about pain. I trusted him, Diane continued. Her voice softer now, more fragile. And now, I don't know if I can ever feel that way again. Tracy stepped closer. But you still love him. Diane didn't answer. She didn't need to. The silence confirmed it. And that's what made this so hard. Because love didn't disappear, even when trust did. Jack is hurting too, Tracy said gently. Diane closed her eyes. Because she knew that was true, she had seen it, felt it. But it didn't erase what happened. It didn't fix the damage. Sometimes, Tracy continued softly, healing doesn't start with answers. A pause, sometimes it starts with a choice. Diane opened her eyes again, and for the first time, there was hesitation, not anger, not resistance, just uncertainty, because maybe, just maybe, Tracy was right. Back in Las Vegas, Nick's world was closing in. The ropes around his wrists burned as he shifted again, still no give, still no escape. Matt stood nearby, watching him like a predator observing prey. You always were stubborn, Matt said calmly. Nick didn't respond. He was thinking, calculating, looking for anything, any weakness, any mistake. You're not going to win this, Nick said finally. Matt tilted his head slightly. Win, he repeated. A slow smile formed. This isn't a game. Nick's jaw tightened. Because he knew that tone, this was something worse, something deeper. Matt stepped closer. So let me make this simple, he said. Because whatever came next, it wouldn't be good. You're here because I want you to feel it. Nick frowned. Feel what? Matt leaned in slightly. The fear. Silence fell between them. Heavy, uncomfortable, real, because Nick could feel it. Even if he refused to show it. Meanwhile, just across the Vegas Strip, Chelsea stepped out onto the street. Her eyes scanning everything around her, the lights, the crowds, the noise, but none of it mattered. Because her focus was on one thing, Adam. She pulled out her phone again, no answer. Still, her grip tightened. This isn't like him, she muttered. She could feel it. That instinct. It wasn't going away. And she wasn't going to ignore it anymore. I'm finding you, she said under her breath. Because whatever was happening, she was about to walk straight into it. Back with Sally, she stepped out of the bathroom slowly. Audra immediately noticed the difference, the tension, the emotion. Something had happened. Well, Audra asked carefully. Sally looked at her, her lips parted slightly, but for a moment, no words came out. How do you even say something like this? How do you change everything with a single sentence? Finally, it's positive. The words hung in the air. Audra's expression shifted. Then understanding. Well, Audra said slowly, that's big. Sally let out a shaky breath. Yeah, she replied softly. Big didn't even begin to cover it. Audra crossed her arms slightly. What are you going to do? That question hit harder than anything else. Because Sally didn't have an answer. Not yet. I don't know, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper, and for once Audra didn't push. Because even she knew this wasn't something you rushed. Back in Genoa City, Diane turned away slightly, her thoughts spinning, her emotions clashing. I need time, she said finally. Tracy nodded gently. Then take it. No pressure, no demands, just understanding. But don't take too long, Tracy added softly. Diane looked back at her. Why? Tracy's expression softened. Because sometimes waiting too long can cost you everything. That warning lingered. Because deep down, Diane knew it was true. Meanwhile, in the storage room, everything shifted. Matt reached into his pocket. Nick's eyes followed the movement instantly. Alert, focused. What is that? Nick demanded. Instead, he slowly pulled something out and held it up just enough for Nick to see. Nick's eyes widened. Because whatever Matt was holding, it wasn't just for show, and suddenly, the situation became even more dangerous. You see this? Matt said quietly. Nick didn't respond. But his expression said enough. Matt stepped closer. This is how things change, he continued. Nick's mind raced, trying to figure it out, trying to stay ahead. But the truth was, he was running out of time. Elsewhere, Chelsea turned a corner, her pace quickening, her instincts guiding her. Something pulled her forward, something she couldn't explain, and then she stopped, her eyes locking onto a building ahead. Something about it felt wrong, too quiet, too hidden. Her heart started pounding, because deep down, she knew this was it. This was where everything was leading. Back inside, Nick stared at Matt. You don't have to do this, he said firmly. Matt let out a quiet laugh. Don't I? Another step closer, another shift in the tension, because from where I'm standing, Matt continued, this feels exactly right. Nick's breathing slowed. Not from calm, but from focus. Because if this was it, he wasn't going down without a fight. You think this ends well for you? Nick asked. Matt smiled again. That same cold certainty. It already has. And that's when a sound echoed from outside. Faint, but real. Both men froze for a split second. Matt's eyes narrowed. Nick's heart jumped. Because someone was there, someone close, someone who could change everything. Outside, Chelsea stepped closer to the door, her hand hovering, her breath unsteady, because whatever was behind it, she was about to face it. Inside, Matt turned back to Nick. Looks like we might have company, he said quietly. Nick held his gaze, unflinching, because now, everything was about to collide. And in that moment, one question remained hanging in the air: was Chelsea about to save Nick, or walk straight into a nightmare she could never escape?